Okay, hey everyone. We are live for our kickoff call for the 21 Laws of Leadership. Okay, who has been through this study before? We've led this, I think, twice or 3 times.
I don't remember.
On this team, and it's time for a new one, another group of people to go through. And the cool thing about this study is every single person can lift their leadership lid. And I love this quote. I'll just quote Jessica Heffley. Leaders are learners. Leaders are learners. And so those of you that are on tonight or listening tomorrow, just know that the fact that you are on this call shows that you are a leader at some level. And I just want to congratulate you, or we want to congratulate you for investing in yourself, investing in your business. And you know, this is the thing, like, we're in it to win it in Plexus, and we're in this for the long haul. So I think it's just encouraging that there's other people that want to learn and grow with us. And so we're coming and hosting this study not as like the ones that know it all, because we don't, but we're willing to learn and grow with you guys. And so my encouragement is don't get overwhelmed. I don't want this book to feel like overwhelmed to you. I want you to just be encouraged to take, even if you can just glean one thing and apply that to your business.
Yeah. One thing I used to do, reading books or even going to conferences, is I would take it and I would take notes, and I would write down every single note. And by the time I got home, I had 737 things to do, and I ended up doing nothing because I was overwhelmed with everything. So now I don't even take notes really, just a couple, and I just try to just, every conference I go to or every person I listen to, every book I read, I just try to apply 1 or 2 things. Just keep it simple, the things that stick out, and just keep it simple. It's not as overwhelming. At least to me, it's not.
Yes, and so I think that's the danger, is that we can glean so much info that then we're kind of in paralysis mode and we apply nothing. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys to have takeaways. This is going to be interactive, so please definitely do the homework for it. If your weekend was crazy because you're at Leaders Retreat, no stress, no worries, but you can get it done this week, and look forward to next week's call. And different leaders are going to be hosting each week, so you're not going to be hearing from us every week. There's going to be different people hopping on to lead and facilitate the call. I was listening to a book this morning when I was running called the Millionaire Mindset. It is so good, but one thing that resonated with me is that he was saying that 2 people can go to the same conference, or I'll say maybe the same book study, but those 2 people have vastly different results. One person takes what they learn and flies to the top and gets successful. The other person does not. And so I want to encourage every single one of us that's on this call to not be like Joe Schmo that sits and soaks and then does nothing with the information. I want you guys to be encouraged to be doers and to take what you glean, apply it, and help yourself be successful. And I will say that the difference between the successful person that goes to the conference or the book study and the not successful one is limiting beliefs and mindset. And so anyways, I just that resonated with me for whatever reason. I was just like, yeah, that's so true. Let's be doers, right, of what we hear. And I also wrote down a couple of notes when I was reading this morning. And I wanted to just remind us all that we are all leaders in some way. So if you have one person on your team in Plexus, you are a leader. If you are a mom, a dad, a grandma, a teacher, whatever your role is at work, you probably are in some sort of leadership role at some level. And so I think what's cool is that this stuff that we're going to learn is applicable to everything. And when you start lifting the leadership lid in one area, it lifts it in every area. So that's what's cool about personal growth, is it blesses and benefits every part of your life. Okay, who completed the evaluation in the very front part of this book? Any hands? Okay. Did anyone think that it was some of the questions you'd maybe never considered before? I felt like, you know, we've done this a couple of times, but even just the awareness of some of those questions and the answers that you jot down, I think is really, really helpful. One win that I saw is that my leadership has grown since the last time we hosted this, which was probably 2 years ago. So, and I thought through specific ways when I was listening or when I was reading those questions, where I've had growth, which is exciting, right? Isn't that cool? So the next time you do this, maybe with your team, in a year or two, you'll probably see your leadership grow. And so you would have gotten a score at the very end, and then you'll be able to also pinpoint which areas are your strengths and which areas are your weakness. And I thought it was cool that if you have certain weaknesses, have people on your team fill those spots. It's like really, I want to say, play into your strengths a lot and recruit your weaknesses. Okay. So, and the other thing too is as we grow in leadership, we're going to get better at all the things, by the way. Okay. On the page, let's see. Oopsie. On page, oops, it was in your intro. Hang on. There we go. On page 12, in my book, I don't know if it's the same in yours, he had a student at a conference ask him, if you could boil down all the leadership laws into one, what would they be? And John Maxwell said, the one thing you need to know about leadership is that there's more than one thing you need to know about leadership. To lead well, we must do 21 things well. And the reality is that we're all not going to be great at 21 things, right? So the key is to develop a leadership team. And so I thought it was cool that once you fill out your evaluation, you'll discover which laws you're average or below in, and begin looking for team members whose skills are strong where yours are weak. They will complement you and vice versa, and the whole team will benefit. That will make it possible for you to develop an all-star leadership team. Remember, and I thought this was key, remember, none of us is as smart as all of us. Okay, and then I thought right after that, he had 4 points. And so we need to keep these things in mind. Number 1 is that the laws can be learned. Number 2, the laws can stand alone. Each law complements all the others, but you don't need one in order to learn the others. Number 3, the laws carry consequences with them. Apply the laws and people will follow you. Violate or ignore them, and you will not be able to lead others. And then number 4 is these laws are the foundation of leadership. Once you learn the principles, you have to practice them and apply them to your life. Okay, so then the evaluation is next. Does anyone want to unmute and maybe share something that you learned about yourself after doing that evaluation? Is anyone willing to unmute or pop it in the chat thread? Maybe on what your strength was? Who's willing to pop on and share something about theirs? Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. What if it was $1,000 to the person who shared something first?
Okay, Debbie's gonna share.
Okay, perfect.
I just learned that even though I've done a lot of things in my life and I've had a lot of jobs, I've never looked at myself as a leader. And so a lot of these things I've never evaluated myself in these areas like this. So it was hard for me to apply, I guess, and think back of what I've done. So I feel like I'm really low in everything. But I know I'm not. I don't know. It was just hard for me to evaluate myself as a leader, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Did you have one particular area that you're highest in?
Probably my highest was sacrifice, which is typical for me because I always try to do it all myself and never want to ask anybody for help. sacrifice and empowerment were my two highest.
Okay. Awesome. Well, the cool thing is that an awareness by doing the study is going to lift your leadership leg.
Hopefully.
Awesome. Okay. And this is the other thing. What we focus on expands. So if we're focusing on our leadership, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get better at it, right? So I jotted down a few things about what leadership means to me. Leadership is showing up every day. Leadership is doing the scary or uncomfortable things. Leaders confront comfort. You know what I did right after I read this? Because leaders confront comfort, I went and ran my couple of miles and made it happen even though I didn't want to. So that was my specific example of how I confronted comfort today. Leaders are learners. We already talked about that. Constantly evaluating and asking ourselves the hard questions. Leadership is initiating. Leadership is being present and visible. And another adjective that just came to me is vulnerable. Leaders are vulnerable. And that's something that I specifically struggle with. I'll just tell you, I don't know if it has to do with the way I'm wired in my Enneagram, but vulnerability is hard for me. But I know that the more vulnerable I am as a leader, the more we're going to connect, because we're people of like passions, right? We're people with similar fears, similar, mindsets and things like that. I also put down leaders are innovative. When I think through some of the top leaders in our company, I think of innovators. They're creative. They're constantly thinking, how can I serve more people? How can I help my team? Leaders are disciplined. I think that goes back to character, right? Leaders are consistent. And this is something that came to me as I was reading the chapter, is leaders lead themselves first. Before we can lead other people, we have to lead ourselves, right? Which means showing up every day, doing the things that we know. I think leaders also have an intuition and know how to prioritize. And so sometimes it's like, okay, when I sit down to work, what am I going to do? And I think that's a mark of leadership, when you can sit down and prioritize the things that need to be done first, top priority things, right? I just had a thought and it left me. Okay, well, that's okay. All right, so that's our little introduction, and then I'm going to pass it off to Justin, because he's going to talk about the law of the lid, chapter 1.
Okay. You're going to have to bear with me, because I'd have to wear reading glasses now. It's a new thing that middle age is blessing me with. I have nose hair, ear hair, and now reading glasses. I am about half over. So I'm about half-time at life. So some of these things happen, I guess. But anyway, so you have to bear with me putting my glasses on and taking them off. I'm trying to get used to them. But has anybody read John Maxwell books before? Anybody seen some? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, he's got a couple. Good. Have you heard him speak at an event before? He's amazing. Actually, he's not even that exciting. He just sits in a chair and he's like, "Hi, I'm John. I'm your friend." And he just talks, and it's great. It's perfect. But one thing that's neat, we listened to, I'm trying to think when we listened to John Maxwell last. I think it was at a convention or maybe it was a leaders retreat in Florida. I think the convention in Florida. It was excellent. But one thing I want to encourage everybody with, and I'm encouraging myself with this, because I'm not anywhere near where I should be as a leader. There's moments where I think each one of us shine in leadership and, look really good. And there's moments where we completely drop the ball and miss it. There's something I did just this week or last week, and it was a total leadership failure. And I didn't even notice the failure until later. And I'm like, man, I didn't even see that I failed. So I think the one is we need to be patient. Leadership is a lifetime. It's something that we learn over a whole lifetime. John Maxwell himself, the last time I heard him speak, shared in one of the books that he rewrote one of his first books on leadership, like 30, 40 years later. And he had to change over half of the material. He didn't just add, he had to like take stuff out and change over half the material because he, as a leader, grew so much over the last several decades that he's been doing and teaching and training on leadership. So be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself. And another thing is, when we study leadership, I think it helps us all to be a little more patient and kind to any leadership that we're under. You know, the best way to learn how to treat leaders is to be put in the leadership position. And it's like, whoa, this isn't exactly what I thought it was. So be patient with yourself. And like I said, we're all learning together. There's not a one of us that has arrived in the leadership department. Some are better than others at certain areas, but really we all have a lot to learn. That's why we're here. That's why we're showing up and reading and learning together. So the first chapter is the law of the lid. Law of the lid. And I'm going to ask one thing too. On the front of my book, I don't have the evaluation. So if somebody, and maybe some others don't have that evaluation either, I filled it out before, but if somebody has the evaluation in your book and you have not filled it out yet, could you make copies and maybe just take picture or something and put it in the comments, or maybe even on the team page so other people can maybe print that off and use it if you don't mind. So, okay, law of the lid. Now this is a really interesting thing. And I think every leader hits their lid. Not only once, I think they hit it over and over and over again. So this isn't like a one-time event. This is a continual thing where we get to a point in our leadership and we have, okay, thank you, Natalie, I appreciate that. So I think this is something that we are going to be faced with over and over and over on our leadership journey, is a lid. There's going to be something in the way, something that needs to be learned, something that needs to be cut loose, something that needs to be overcome before we can take it to the next level. I heard T.D. Jakes say one time, new levels bring new devils. So the farther we go, the more things we have to deal with. You know, they don't just go away, they just get bigger, right? So that's how leadership works. So one thing I really liked, on the first page, he says leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. So if we're going to be effective, we're going to have to keep growing, and we're going to have to, as my coach tells me to do often, is you need to confront comfort. Justin, you like comfort. You love to feel good. You need to confront comfort. So we're going to have to do that with leadership. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. The higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on his potential. And I would just say, wherever you are, you're not stuck there. That's just where you are now. So there's opportunity to learn. There's opportunity to grow. The only way we're not going to learn, the only way we're not going to grow is if we quit. And that's not a good option. So, was anybody familiar with Ray Kroc before this? Anybody familiar with the story of the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc? Ray Kroc's an amazing leader. He's dead now, but he's been dead for a long time. But what an amazing story. There's a movie that's out called Founder also. I don't know if you've seen that or not, and I don't know how accurate it is, but it's really interesting from a business perspective. So if you have a chance, if you're on Netflix or something like that, look up the movie Founder. It has Michael Keaton in it, and it's really interesting about this exact story that we're talking about. So one thing I want to mention in light of leadership is that the McDonald's brothers had leadership. They had a great level of leadership. They had a great level of success. They just got to a point where they hit a lid and they wouldn't go any farther. And I think I know why, just from reading this. But
Founder was the name of the movie.
yes, Founder. So the first thing I underlined was, it says the brothers' desire for success was strong. Their desire for success was strong. So they kept looking for better business opportunities. This is on page 2 in my book. And I think that's incredibly important. And that's one thing I want to point out about leaders. Leaders they're never quite satisfied. They might be content, they might be happy, but it's always like, hey, there's something else that we can be doing here. There's something else. I have a desire to succeed. And that's exactly what these guys had. And that's exactly what we're going to have to succeed in our Plexus business. We're going to have a desire to succeed and to continually keep looking for things that we can be doing to succeed. It goes on, as it goes down here on the bottom of page 2, it says that this is another leadership principle I want to point out. It says their intuition told them that times were changing, and they made modifications to their restaurant business. Another key, and we'll go through it, I think it's the law of intuition, and it's coming up in the weeks to come, is that they had an intuition saying, times are changing. We're going to have to make some adjustments. Okay, we're going to have to make some adjustments to our business if we're going to be successful. So, and they did. And the same thing with our businesses, or any area of life, really. If we're going to be successful, we're going to have to develop an intuition like, hey, some things are changing here. Maybe it's in maybe it's not Plexus, maybe it's just in a family. Like, hey, times are changing. Our seasons are changing. Things are changing. We need to make some adjustments here. Our Plexus business is no different. There's different seasons in our Plexus business. There's seasons there's highs, there's lows, there's things that change with social media. We're going to have to learn as leaders how to adjust. In the military, we said improvise, adapt, and overcome. Those are some words that we used, and that's what we're going to have to do in our Plexus business. But I want to show something here. On page 3, right in the middle, at the very last sentence there, right in the middle, it says the McDonald's never went any further because their weak leadership put a lid on their ability to succeed. They went as far as they could go, and they hit a lid. They made some adjustments. They wanted to succeed. All their things were right, but they hit a lid. They hit a lid. And it says on page 4 that they were efficient managers, but they were not leaders. They were not leaders. So what they did was they hooked up or partnered with a man named Ray Kroc, who was a leader, is what it says on page 4. And this is something I want to point out also on page 4 about Ray Kroc and his leadership ability and why his lid was much higher. And this is exactly why. And I think this is a lesson we all need to think about. Ray Kroc recruited and hired the sharpest people he could find. That you want to know how to recruit and how to win at Plexus? That's it right there. What Ray Kroc did with McDonald's is how you win with Plexus. You recruit people that are better than you. You recruit people that are smarter than you. You recruit people that make you uncomfortable. They're so much better than you. Because guess what happens? It's kind of like running. If you have a running partner and you're the fastest guy or girl in your running group, you will get slower over time. If you're the slowest runner in your group, you might be the slowest one forever, but your time will improve over time because of who you're surrounding yourself with. Our Plexus business is no different. And one of my things, well, let me see here. Let me not get ahead of myself. I would say this is the difference in the level of leadership between the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc. And this is it. The brothers were the smartest people in their circle. And if you look at their business and their business model, everybody came to them to be trained. Right? People from other businesses were coming to them. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do this? And they were constantly training these other people. Hey, you need to be like me. Ray Kroc, on the other hand, was not like that. Ray Kroc hired and recruited the smartest people in his circle. Totally different than the McDonald's brothers. Totally different approach. Not only did he recruit and hire the smartest people that he was around, he also served them. I think that's another important lesson to learn in light of leadership and why his leadership lid was so much higher than the McDonald's brothers. It says here on page 4 about Ray Kroc, during his first 8 years with McDonald's, he took no salary. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but he personally borrowed money from the bank and against his life insurance to help cover the salaries of a few key leaders he wanted on the team. Now, why did he want them on the team? Because they were better than him. They were smarter than he was. He was serving them. He says he sacrificed and his leadership paid off. His leadership paid off. And from a money perspective, I think that if I remember right, Ray Kroc, he borrowed money to start all this and surrounded himself with a smart, capable team. And then when he died at the end, I think he was worth, I don't know, $600 million, which is the equivalent of like 1.2 billion today. McDonald's, at least 7 years ago, McDonald's was the single largest owner of real estate in the world. McDonald's, and that's crazy. They weren't in the burger business. He was in the real estate business. Mm-hmm. So, amazing leadership. But I just want to point out that, again, the McDonald's brothers only went so far because they were the smartest people in their circle. Ray Kroc took it to a whole nother level because he surrounded himself with people smarter than him. And that's how we are going to win and recruit in Plexus. We have to recruit better than us. We have to. There's people on this team that are so much smarter and more capable than Megan and I. Mm-hmm. It's just the truth. And that's how we're all going to make it, is how we recruit. I want to point out another leadership example. I don't know if anybody watches football. If not, just pay attention to the principle here. Bill Belichick is a head coach of the New England Patriots. Now, whether you like the New England Patriots or not, that's insignificant for my point here. The point is the guy's won, I don't know, 5, 6 Super Bowls in the last 10, 12 years, 15 years, probably 20 years, whatever. He's a winner. Some people call him a cheater. I don't know, whatever. However, one of the principles he uses is what he does with his team. He has all these rings. He has all this potential. He could sit, and this is before they owned their own plane, when they used to fly commercial. He deserves to sit up front in first class. However, he would always sit and coach and let his veteran players sit up front in first class so they could stretch out and sleep. I thought that was absolutely incredible. And that is like Ray Kroc style leadership. So pay attention to that. If we're on a flight and I have first class, I don't know that I'm going to give you my seat. I've rode in first class before and it was awesome. So I have things to learn. Obviously, my lid needs to be bumped up, right? Right. Okay. Another thing on page 5, I'm almost done, and then Megan can take over. But another thing on page 5, at the beginning of the second section, it says, I believe that success is within the reach of just about everyone. And I absolutely believe that. I think that sometimes our past, sometimes failures, sometimes people's words, sometimes our own thoughts can jeopardize our success. It can jeopardize our future, and we shouldn't let it. I absolutely agree with John Maxwell that success is within reach of everybody on this call. I think that each one of us has extreme potential. And I'm not just saying that because it's a rah-rah cheerleading thing. I honestly believe that. But it's going to take work. It's going to take surrounding ourselves with good people, and it's going to take a lot of study. It's going to take a lot of learning. The higher you want to climb, the more you need leadership. That's true. The greater impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. So I think that's true. We want to go higher. We want to have more of an impact. We're going to have to grow. We're going to have to grow and continue to learn. Let me see. I'll skip that. So that's kind of just my cliff notes of the law of the lid. And I think that everybody can grow. Everybody can bump their leadership lid up. So I think it's important to learn, and I think it's important to also just pay attention, where are we at? It's important to be honest with ourselves. You know, when I first read this book, I thought, well, I'm like at a 10, I'm pretty sure. And I started reading the book, I'm like, no, I'm struggling here. Like, I need some serious help. I'm not as good as I thought I was. And that's a good place to be, because it gives you a little bit of hunger. It gives you a little bit of spark and a desire to grow. So one thing I would encourage you to do on page 10, at least it's page 10 in my book. I know there's a couple different versions out there, but on page 10 in my book, there's a page that says applying the law of the lid to your life. I'd really encourage you, as I'm encouraging myself, to go through these things and answer the questions honestly. And also, there's one thing I want to point out. It talks about, of course, listing your goals, assessing your own leadership ability, and I'd say be honest. Be honest with yourself. You know, before we can get somewhere, we have to know where we're at. And we need to be honest with where we're at. The other thing I would say is, on number 3, ask others to rate your leadership. Mm. Now, I'm going to give you a little story, and then I'm going to get off here. There's a group of people that know your level of leadership. And this is a dangerous thing, because I did this one time. I asked my family, I said, if you could change some things about me, what would you change? What's some things you don't like about me? And I thought, they would say, well, nothing, Daddy. Of course, you're the greatest dad on the planet, and we have nothing to learn. To my surprise, those people pay attention. And their honest feedback was very hard to listen to, but it was a learning lesson for me. So as you're asking, find somebody that'll be honest with you, and kids are extremely honest. So if you dare, you may even ask your family these questions to assess your leadership style. It's very dangerous. So, but they're very honest, and they'll let you know exactly where you are. So that is chapter 1.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Anything that resonated with them from chapter 1? You can unmute, or you can pop it in the chat, either way.
I appreciate what you point out about leadership having a multiplying effect. We want to be effective, we want to help people, but it's really good to have at the beginning of a book like this, reminding ourselves that our own impact will be multiplied as we learn to lead others. I liked his quote, personal success without leadership ability brings only limited effectiveness. And we want to be effective. We want to multiply our impact, and just to be a blessing in as many lives as possible. So that was a little thing that stood out to me.
Who else? Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to chapter 2, talking about influence. Justin and I were talking about this right before we popped on. And this is interesting to me because I was asking him, I'm like, okay, so influence is one of those things. I'm like, I feel like it's hard to duplicate that. Like, how do you teach influence to someone? And he's like, well, you can duplicate the do. He's like, you can't necessarily duplicate the be, because influence is who you are. It's like who you are, right? And so we were just talking about how modeling it, studying about it, bringing a level of awareness to it so that we can be aware of, hey, well, what is my influence? And I think these are some things that I had jotted down. Think how influence affects your business. So, for example, some people are really, really good at influencing people to buy. We have to learn to be influencers to keep people on their products, right? I think influence might also tie in with education, right? Showing up and being present, that it helps influence, right? And we influence people to go silver. Or like Justin was saying, recruit the right people. You don't have to influence them or teach them anything necessarily. You just introduce them to what we have here. But those are some things I had jotted down. Success increases influence. Personal growth increases influence. And it reminded me of the Brene Brown study that we did last fall about, she says, who you are is how you lead, right? And we attract who we are. Also, I think influencers are somewhat intuitive, right? I think it goes back to, relationships built, our investments in other people. You think of the piggy bank, right? So our relationships and our investment in people's lives, that builds influence, right? And a lot of people have been working on that over the course of a lifetime, even if you're like kind of unintentionally doing that, just because you are an influencer, you are someone that adds value to people, right? Influencers love well, serve, add value. Having influence widens your circle. And it kind of goes back to that idea that Brooke Hemingway coined during her Double Diamond speech. She said MLM to her means my life magnified. So when you have influence and you have a platform, it enables us to share our values, the things that we love, the things that we see value in. It gives us a bigger platform to share those things. Okay, so in the law of influence in that chapter, he started with a story about Abraham Lincoln basically having no influence when he was in that military position, but then how he earned it, right, over time. And it's interesting because titles don't have much value when it comes to leading. True leadership cannot be awarded, appointed, or assigned. It comes from influence, and it must be earned. So I thought that was interesting. If you go on to page 16, where he talks about the difference between leadership is about influencing people to follow, while management focuses on maintaining systems. Did that resonate with anyone else? I just thought that was really interesting. Managers can maintain direction, but they often can't change it. Systems and processes can only do so much. To move people in a new direction, you need influence. And Justin and I were talking about this, like really in our businesses, it takes both of those things. I personally hit a lid after I went Emerald. So I was, a couple 100 points, above Emerald, and we just stalled out for like a year and a half. and what got us out of the stall was the fact that I realized that I didn't really have systems or processes. I didn't have a clear-cut, goal for each month. I wasn't leading anything consistently, in terms of hosting an event. We kind of were willy-nilly with our schedule for our team and things like that. And so learning how Brooke Hemingway did systems, right, and had a process helped us go diamond and helped take the team and triple it, right? Triple the size of that. But what Justin was saying, he's like, well, you need systems and processes, and you also need influence. So I suppose that they kind of need to be growing at a parallel rate. But I just thought that just really resonated with me. Okay, and then if we go to the discussion questions, let's talk about those. So the number one question is, what is the difference between management and leadership? You can unmute and share. Someone can pop in.
I think management is a title. It has to do with your position, and just because you're where you're at, people basically have to tell you.
Whoops, you went silent. That was weird. Are you still there? It's like muted. That's weird. Yes, so management has to do with titles. Leadership has to do with influence, right? Would everyone agree with that? What obstacles, this is question number 3. What obstacles might people come up against if they have bought into one of the leadership myths?
Hi. I kind of relate that with my cousin, that he has all the knowledge and influence. He's got a high IQ. It's probably off the charts, but he cannot relate to people at all. He thinks and he researches everything, but everything he researches, it's almost like he's right and everyone else is wrong. But he really has an IQ, so I kind of renamed that for my benefit as to Brent's Law. But it's I can understand that, where some people think that if you have the knowledge and the intelligence, then you're also a born leader, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of learn, I think, the leadership part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that leaders aren't necessarily the smartest. So if you are thinking, if you're in a circle and you think, man, I'm just not the smartest person here, that's great. Smart people need leaders. And a lot of times, I'm being serious. A lot of times A students work for C students. Now think about this. I was a D student probably, but anyway, it doesn't matter. A students, you want the A students on your team. They're the doctors, they're the lawyers, they're the engineers. Those are the ones. But there's a book by Robert Kiyosaki that talks about that, and it's really interesting. Why C students work for A students. It's interesting perspective. So if you feel like you're not the smartest person, that means you're probably in prime position to lead. In my opinion. Has nothing to do with smarts or grades or education, any of that stuff.
I think it's important too, as you were looking at this, to think about it from the standpoint of not using people, but actually building the relationships with people and serving them. As we serve people, we become better leaders, rather than the people who in their leadership are constantly using people to try to further their leadership. So learning to serve people versus the idea of using people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you guys heard the term servant leadership?
Mhm.
Effective leaders are servants, you know. Number 5 says, would you consider yourself to be a leader? Who do you influence? So who's willing to pipe up their thoughts on that? You're not bragging to say that you consider yourself a leader. So don't feel, scarcity or whatever holding you back there. So yeah, feel free to pop on. Molly, are you unmuted?
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit.
Sure.
I had always, I guess at the beginning, considered myself to be a leader because I've got a large family, etc. But when I really delved into leadership, I recognized that my leadership was such on the ground floor level because the people that I led were doing so by force, which is maybe sounds uglier than what it is, but by title. Thank you, Jeremy. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily by buying into the vision or by being inspired. So that has really opened my eyes to ways that I want to lead my team, which is, a volunteer army, by inspiration and inspiring and empowering, because it is a volunteer army. It's different than my family. So that awareness has really helped me to grow my leadership.
I remember Angie Thompson, who's a diamond that lives about an hour from here. She's been in Plexus for a long time. Yeah. And she's been a diamond for a long time. But she told me, she said, Megan, we get paid to inspire people. So she was basically saying, we get paid to influence people, right? That just really resonated with me. I'm like, whoa, who am I inspiring? Like, am I inspiring anyone? But that was that just really stuck with me when she said that to me. And so it, that subconscious realization, like, you know what, I am a leader. How am I inspiring my team? How am I inspiring the people that I'm influencing, Do you guys have some ideas on positive ways that you could expand your influence in your organization? Number 6. Who has some ideas?
So the thought I had on that today as I was working on it was I've got to work harder on adding value every day. Not just, we talked about knowledge a minute ago, that not just knowledge, not just information, but I've got to work harder on adding value on a daily basis in all my interactions.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any specific examples or some action steps that you're going to do, like specifics, just to share ideas? Yeah.
Well, so this wasn't necessarily Plexus related, but what brought it to a head today was actually a child who did not want to do his government homework. And I realized that he didn't see any value in it. I had not shared with him why that would be a valuable thing for him to have in his life. So if I'm not adding value by helping him understand why that study is important in a good way, helping him relate to why understanding our government is important, I'm just throwing knowledge at him. I'm not inspiring him to want to be part of our government. So that's not Plexus related, but it's just the idea of, in every interaction, how can I bring value to it? Mm-hmm. And so that caused me to start thinking about making sure, even if I'm sharing, we're sharing a lot about the collagen right now, and that not just sharing about the collagen, but having a conversation with them about their life or what's going on, or possibly even offering to, matter of fact, one of the girls that I was reaching out to about the collagen shared with me that she has to have knee replacement surgery on Wednesday. So just stopping everything else and praying with her on the phone. Those are all ways to add value without being fake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could stop and pray with her and be real in her life. And talking about collagen could go on hold while we dealt with the fact that she's got to have knee replacement surgery on Wednesday. So those are the kinds of things I was thinking about, of adding value, of making sure that we're building the relationship and adding value.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for sharing those specific things. And when I think of adding value, I think of being a giver more than being a taker. And one thing that I listened to Sonia Dudley and who was the first diamond in Plexus? Sheila Medina. And just the way that they conduct their life, like they are givers, they are value adders, like even to the grocery store checkout person. You know, they've shared examples of how they engage those people, you know, and so for me, that doesn't necessarily come intuitively to me. I don't know if I'm one of those like energy saver introverted, you know, a little bit more introverted people or what, or just the fact that, you know, my life is busy. I'm thinking of the next thing, like, you know, let's get out of the grocery store and go. But intentionally engaging those people, just because it gives you a level of awareness that and this is the essence of the Christian life too, right? Because it gives us opportunities with people. And, you know, we say it a lot, but this is business as ministry. So anything in our life that enables us to have a bigger platform and to be in contact with more people is an opportunity for, I mean, yes, Plexus, but ultimately for the gospel. You know, that's how I and we think through things. And so look for ways to practice in your daily life with your kids, with your husband, with the checkout people, just engaging, adding value. And the one thing that I will say that I am doing more intentionally is thinking about the things that I'm good at or my brand kind of, which one of my brands is motherhood, like embracing motherhood, you know, hashtag intentional motherhood or whatever. And so when I think through ways people have added value to me as a mother or whatever, I'm thinking, you know what, share that on Facebook. You know, that adds value to people. Sometimes I feel like, oh, what could I share? I feel like sometimes I don't have the bandwidth or whatever. I don't take the intentional time to create something that would be adding value to people. But I think we need to. It shouldn't just be Plexus, buy, right? We need to look for ways, because I wrote this down actually, your paycheck is directly related to the amount of value you add to other people. So who else has something? You see that apply section on the next page? Which of the myths in the chapter have you bought into in the past? Management, entrepreneur, knowledge, pioneer, or position? Does anyone have anything that you want to pipe in there? I thought that second thing was interesting. What do you usually rely upon most people to persuade people to follow you? Sorry, I didn't read that right. What do you usually rely upon most to persuade people to follow you? Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. So character is who you are. Relationships are who you know. Knowledge is what you know. Intuition is what you feel. It's like my lowest. Experience, where you've been. Past success, what you've done. Or ability is what you can do. Oh, you guys are putting stuff in the chat. Sorry. Character and relationships. Yeah. Well, you're probably high in certain ones and lower in other ones. So yeah, it's just interesting to notice that. Okay. Well, then the last question I wanted to go over really quick is, when do you find yourself being influenced by someone else because of his or her position, knowledge, or leadership? Is anyone willing to share about that? When do you find yourself being influenced by someone else because of his or her position, knowledge, or leadership? I feel like position ranks really low for me. Like,
but because of the, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Because of the green in my personality, I'm often drawn to a person with knowledge because I want that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I reach out for that. But I think long term, what I'm looking for, and I think of this, and I'm thinking this in like relationship to my marriage relationship, I'm looking for somebody who is going to inspire me, who is going to lead me to that next level, who's going to show me where I need to go. So while I might be drawn to that knowledge, I think in the long run, it's true leadership that really keeps me going.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought to share too, Jan, kind of in the same way what we're drawn to. Like, I might be drawn to ask all the diamonds based on their position, what did you do to get there? But the most value I get from those diamonds are the ones that fill me with inspiration and belief that you too can do that. Not just sharing, well, I did X, Y, Z to get to this position, but the ones that do inspire. That's where the value is.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'll say that Shoshana had a lot of influence over me, even though, like, looking back, I mean, I didn't think of it at the time, but she was someone that I followed. Like, I looked at, you know, what she was putting out there in terms of content and her knowledge on herbs and recipes and how to be healthy, things like that. And that, I mean, her influence is a huge reason why I gave Plexus the time of day. Honestly, like, if it wouldn't have been for her, I don't think the other people in my life that were sharing Plexus wouldn't have resonated with me, because I didn't have someone that had a lot of influence over me sharing, right? Hearing about Plexus. But it was because of her. I'm like, okay, the Plexus thing is coming around again. I know it's good because Shoshana's doing it. You know, it's not just, you know, so-and-so that decides they need to get healthy, you know? So who else has something to say about position, knowledge, or leadership? I think you guys were talking in the chat a little bit too.
Go ahead.
I would agree with the point about inspiration, but also empowerment, because it's exciting to get a new idea, but also feeling like you have the power to decide what to do next. Mm-hmm. Build a strategy for success.
Who else is willing to chime in?
I would just add something to that question. It says, when do you find yourself being influenced by someone else because of his or her position, knowledge, or leadership? whether a person's a good leader, I think, or a bad leader, whether they're deserve to be in the position or whether they don't deserve to be in the position, they are influencing.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership and position is influence. And I think that's something that's really important to understand. I've probably learned a lot more from bad leadership than I have even from good leadership over the years. And I've had some pretty horrible leaders. I mean, I'm not going to go into detail about all of them, but I submitted to them at the time, and just grit your teeth and bear it and take some mental notes and learn, what to do, what not to do. But I think just the position of leadership, whether good or bad, is influence. So I think for us as individuals, as leaders, one thing that we can take away from this is, how am I influencing with the position that I'm in?
Mm-hmm.
Are we influencing for good or not? And because, again, whether you deserve the position, whether you don't, whether you're a good leader, whether you're not, you're leading. And bad leaders do lead. They just lead in the wrong direction. So I think it's important just to understand, again, that positions and of leadership are influence. So the question is, how are we influencing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that it also reminds me that it's a stewardship,
mm-hmm.
and that we're accountable ultimately to God for how we lead in
Yeah.
our homes or in our businesses or in our churches, however.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. If you just read through the Old Testament of the history of Israel, there was more bad leadership than good leadership. However, it was influence. It influenced a whole nation negatively or positively. Same way with our country. It's influenced
mm-hmm.
By those positions. So I think it's important just to know that each one of us has extreme influence, whether you think you have influence or whether you think you don't.
Mm-hmm.
We all have influence.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have more influence than we realize.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people watching us, and they may not say anything, but I think that a lot more people are paying attention to everything that we're doing, more than we think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the one thing that I guess, as you start to study leadership, you can't unlearn it. And so once you have defined what a leader looks like, it can create a little bit of discontent maybe, or frustration, or there's just that awareness of sometimes you start to recognize, why am I frustrated by this person? Where maybe you're under someone's leadership in a certain circle or area of your life, and then you realize, well, it's because their leadership lid isn't very high or whatever. So it is interesting as you start to learn these things. So, okay, we're going to be done, guys. It is a little bit after 9. So thank you for popping on. This is going to be interactive. So please definitely make sure that you complete the little question and answers. We're going to, each leader is going to pull out different things in the chapters, and then there'll be discussion. So come prepared to share your top takeaways and things like that, because that's what makes this group really value adding and interactive. So thank you for popping on. We'll see you next Monday.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.